Hello, Alan.
Hello.
How's
Can you hear
everything?
me?
Yeah, very fine. So
Good.
thank you so much. Warm welcome. We are here looking forward to your approach to the Games for Change history and movement, and also I've already mentioned a number of times GameStar Mechanic as a hands-on youth empowerment project and platform. So we really are very happy, very enthused to have you as our keynote speaker today. So the floor is yours. We're going to follow your presentation here. Everyone is now looking at the screen. There's a big picture of yours. Okay, it's a huge
Okay.
screen. And well, thank you so much. And without much further ado, thank you so much, Alan Gershenfeld from Eline.
Great. Thank you, Gilson. Are you on a slide that says leveling up from player to designer?
Yeah, we are moving with the slides, and then I'm going to interrupt you once every now and then, just to make a brief Portuguese translation. We are using that kind of consecutive chat, informal translation here. Okay?
Okay. So for this presentation, rather than focus on what folks can learn by playing games for learning, for health, for social impact, I'm going to focus on what folks, especially kids, can learn by actually making video games. So let's go to the next slide, the slide that starts with Activision. Are you there?
Yes.
Okay, so I started my career in video games at a game publisher called Activision in the early 1990s. The company is now called Activision Blizzard. They merged with Blizzard, the makers of World of Warcraft. When I started in the game industry, very few people took video games seriously at all. In fact, most politicians would vilify video games. They were sort of what was bad for everybody. And most parents and teachers just assumed that video games were a waste of time. When I started at Activision and we started to work on some games that were very complex, not only to play, but really complex to make, I realized just how powerful and unique the medium was. Gilson, do you want to?
Okay.
So I'll mention a few games that we worked on that had a big impact on me. The first one was a game called Civilization Call to Power. Now, Civilization is a very famous franchise in games. Many of you are probably familiar with it. One of the most inspired game designers named Sid Meier created this franchise. We only had the rights to do one version, and we did not have Sid Meier and his team. So we had to hire a team, and we had to build a game design and a game design technology that could enable players to build civilizations in the game. And as we were making that game, we had to understand very deeply how civilizations grow, and we had to debate everything that goes into the making of a civilization. It was almost like a graduate course in history to be able to make an entertainment game about civilization.
Okay.
There was no game design decision and there was no software algorithm that did not have value or moral judgments embedded in it.
Nico.
So I would often bring people in to take tours of the studio to see just how much the team is learning in terms of making the game, as well as how much the players will learn as they play through the game. I'll briefly mention two other games. We did a game called Spycraft, where we worked with the former head of the CIA and the former head of the KGB. This was shortly after the end of the Cold War, and it turns out agents have talent agents, so we were able to get them involved in the game, and we asked them, what are the most difficult moral decisions you made in your career? And we constructed a game narrative where the player had to make those decisions and explore those consequences. Had to make those decisions and explore those consequences. Learning and mastery required in game making. So back then at Activision, I thought a lot about, wouldn't it be great if kids could get involved in making games, because there's so much learning that involved in making games. Slide that says E-Line Media.
Próximo slide.
So many years later, along with some friends, I've started a new company that focuses on empowering kids through computer and video games. And we break our slate into two different sections. One is where we try to make the core curriculum more interested through games and try to make it more relevant and engaging for more kids. In America, currently close to 30% of all kids in America do not graduate on time or drop out. In some cities and some rural areas, that number is north of 40%. So it's clear that we need to make learning more engaging and more relevant. We have another line of products that I'm going to talk about in this presentation, which takes another approach to learning and empowering youth, which is trying to find things that kids are already interested in, that they're deeply interested in, and connect those interests into learning that's important not only in school, but for 21st century lives and careers.
Boa tarde, meu nome é Daniel Betts.
Desculpa, o teu nome?
Daniel Betts.
Daniel Betts, ok.
Sou aluno do curso de produção multimídia aqui da UMESP.
He's a student here at the Universidade Metodista. What's the course? Qual é o curso?
Produção multimídia.
Multimedia Production here at the university.
Falando de games, eu lembro muito da minha infância, que eu já jogava games educativos. Só que é uma coisa bem antiga, eu vejo. Só que até hoje essa cultura ainda não existe. E ele fala nesse programa dele que tem dois projetos, né? A parte onde eles produzem os jogos e a parte onde eles jogam jogos que já existem para criar esse interesse. Eu queria até ter perguntado para os outros palestrantes, mas como que eles fazem essa cultura do jogo educativo ser interessante? Porque, para mim, até hoje eu tenho lembrança desses jogos que eu joguei, mas muita gente não jogou e não tem interesse por isso, fala que é chato, só quer outras coisas. Como que eles trabalham essa questão da cultura?
So his question is about the culture. How do you get this cultural involvement of the kids so that they are really engaged in this game design process? He has fond memories from his childhood. He used to play some so-called educational games, and this is a good memory he has to this day. But anyway, he doesn't see that kind of attitude everywhere. So he's asking, what kind of cultural stimulus do you embed in your projects so as to engage kids in these activities?
So I'm going to talk a fair amount about that when I talk about the GameStar mechanic platform, because our belief is that if we can tap into kids' natural passions, they will be learning all the time, in school, after school, with friends, with teachers. And our belief is that if they start making games, they can then learn from their friends, there can be peer mentors, from older students who've gone through the program, from parents, from even teachers and professionals in the industry. And then we can challenge kids to make games about a wide variety of subjects, which lets them explore everything from social impact themes to even things like bullying through games. But I will talk about that as I go through the presentation.
Ok. Bom, ele vai falar mais, ele vai tratar do GameStar Mechanic, que é uma plataforma que tem esse objetivo, mas
that as I go through the presentation. The interesting thing about making games, and this goes back to my experience at Activision, is that when you make a game, it hits what people call the 21st century skills. These are skills that can map to many different careers that we're going to need everybody in a highly digitally charged network world. So these includes things like critical thinking, problem solving, systems thinking, creativity, collaboration. These are all the type of skills that will be required even if the jobs that emerge over the next 20, 30, 40 years haven't been invented yet. In addition to learning the critical 21st century skills, Making games also creates many pathways. Pathways from game design to computational thinking and game programming and technical careers. From game design to game art and creative and artistic careers, to entrepreneurship in terms of selling games and marketing games and business careers, to academic careers. So our belief is that a pathway from elementary school to middle school to high school and beyond, tapping into the natural passion of kids to make games, is great for teaching both 21st century skills as well as job pathways.
Okay.
For teaching both 21st century skills as well as job pathways. One of the key learning scientists that helped design the game and the learning theory behind it were a woman named Katie Salen from the Institute of Play that started the Quest to Learn School in New York City, and a man by the name of James Paul Gee, who's one of the premier thinkers in terms of games and learning. One of the key goals in terms of the curriculum was on the mandala in the middle, you saw systems thinking. When you design a game, you design a system. It's actually a complex digital system for someone else to use.
Just a
we
second.
live in a world.
Okay. Just a second.
We live in a world of systems. The body is a system, a biological system. The environment is a system. There were 2 PhD dissertations written about the research around the game. It went through 2 years of research. One was studying whether this notion of systems thinking could transfer from understanding systems in a game to understanding other systems. And the other the other PhD, in addition to looking at systems thinking and 21st century skills, really looked at ecologies of learning and understanding that when kids, especially kids that are at risk of dropping out of school, they have many pressures on their time. It might be everything from difficulty at home to gangs, so that the idea of building an ecology of learning where not only can they get a game that engages them in a real skill, but it can get them involved in a community that shares the passion so that they can develop along with that community and stay engaged in a worthwhile and productive pathway.
Okay.
In a worthwhile and productive path. So another key part of the research was, how do we help kids get comfortable with the tools to make games? Because it is hard. If a student is very interested in making games, but the tools are too hard, that could reinforce, which would be a terrible thing. So the first thing to understand with the GameStar platform is it's about game design, not game programming. There's actually no programming in the game because we wanted this to be accessible and not intimidating for kids as young as 8 years old. So there are 3 core components to the platform. Before you even get to the game design tools, we have a whole adventure quest. We call it the quest mode, where first you play the type of games you're going to make. In this case, it's 2D browser-based games like Pac-Man style games or platform games like the old Donkey Kong games. The type of games that are very popular in the casual space. First, you have to know how to play the type of games you're going to make. Then, in the context of a narrative, we use motion comics because comics and manga is sort of the rock and roll of literature for kids the world over today. We tell a story, and in that story, we break down the core principles. So once you go through the quest, we teach you the principles of game design. Then we actually break the games, and this was a key part of the research. So what we found is if we isolate a particular part of the game design, let's say goals, and then we have a game that's broken where you can't beat it, you can't reach the goal, we break it and the student needs to fix it. And in the process of fixing it, we reinforce a core principle. Games have goals, but we also teach them subtly how to use the tool, how to move the blocks around, how to place a goal block, how to move other blocks so you can reach the goal block.